All right, so for today's problem, we have f of t equals 3 times square root of t, and then we're going to find the net change first between a and a plus h. So a is just some arbitrary input for t, and then we're going to move some distance into the future, I guess, if t is representing time. And then, so first we'll find what the net change is, and then we'll find what the average rate of change or what the slope is between those 2 points for this function 3 square root of t. So first is the net change. And so really all we have to do, let's call this t naught and t1. So we can just find f of t1 and then subtract f of t naught. So just essentially this is kind of like you're at your house and you go somewhere, you go to the grocery store or whatever, the net change would be how far did you travel? Um, so the distance between those 2 points. So we could also write this as f of a plus h minus f of a. And so then we're just going to plug in, like we talked about in other videos, plug in a plus h for t, and then we're going to plug in 8 for t. So we have 3 times square root of a plus h minus 3 times the square root of a. And you can leave it like that, or if you want, we can factor out the 3, a plus 8, square root of a plus h minus square root of a, and then 3 on the outside. So either one of those answers would work for that one. So the net change is just how much did the y value in this case change between the first point and the second point. Um, then for the next part, so now average rate of change, another way to state that you probably are more familiar with would be slope. So what is the average slope? So if we look at this graph, just kind of illustrate, 3 times the square root of t looks something like that. And so if a is here and a plus h is there, we have this point, we have that point. So the vertical distance between those 2 points like that, that vertical distance is our net change. The slope would be if we connect those 2 points with a line. So the average rate of change would be the slope between those 2 points. And so that's what we're doing. So if you recall, the slope formula, f of t1 minus f of t naught over t naught, t1 minus t naught, or as you probably heard it stated in algebra, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. This same thing as what we're doing here. So f of t1 minus f of t0 is just what we found up here. So let's go ahead and write that. 3 times square root of a plus h minus square root of a. And now over t1 minus t naught. So a plus h minus a. And hopefully you can see what's going to happen here. The a's will cancel out. And so our numerator will stay the same. Minus a, and then all over h. And what you could do, you don't really have to do this in this problem, but one thing that you could do, kind of getting ready for future problems, maybe future calculus problems, is you need to get used to the idea of multiplying by the conjugate, I guess. Um, So a lot of times you're not really used to putting the radicals in the denominator. But when you get to calculus, one thing that is a very common idea is you want to find, so this is the average rate of change between these 2 points. So if we have a plus h, um, if we want to shrink this, so h is just whatever that distance is between these two. Um, and so if you want to shrink that down and bring this point here closer and closer to what a is, we can shrink that down and get down to the instantaneous rate of change. And to do that, h needs to be 0. And so we see if we just leave it like this, we can't really uh, divide by 0. And so one thing you can do, we don't have to do this in precalculus necessarily, but you can do this. Um, multiply the top and bottom by this, but we're going to change that middle sign to a plus. And so now what we have is a difference of squares. So square this first term, we get a plus h. Square the second term, we get a. And then this is going to be all over h times square root of a plus h plus square root of a. The a's will cancel. And then we have 3h times that denominator. And so now we can see that the h's will cancel. So that h, and then we get our final answer, 3 over square root of a plus h plus square root of a. And so either one of these probably is fine. That one is more what you're going to be looking for when you take calculus, but you could also, for pre-calculus class, you can leave it like that. Either one is fine. Like I said before, a lot of times you don't really want to simplify and answer more than you need to for that problem, but it's also good to kind of know how to do that and be comfortable with it. All right, so if you have any questions or want to leave any comments, want me to do another problem, feel free to leave it in the comments.